Okay, once again, welcome. My name is George Davis, and welcome to the second Block Island Maritime Institute, or BIMI, Tuesday talk of 2021. BIMI's mission is to provide educational programs and maritime activities, including marine science and maritime heritage, for residents and visitors on Block Island. And we want to thank the Island Free Library for making this possible tonight, as we are using their broadband to broadcast. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome Adam Kovarsky, Exploration Center Manager and Aquarist for Rhode Island's Save the Bay organization. Since 1970, the nonprofit Save the Bay has been a leader in the environmental movement in Rhode Island, and Adam will be discussing the organization's role in education, policy, restoration, and adaptation. Welcome, Adam.
Adam Kovarsky, and I'm actually broadcasting from our Exploration Center and Aquarium in Newport, Rhode Island. It's Save the Bay's little aquarium here. Behind me is one of our larger exhibits that we call our Big Fish of the Bay exhibit. You can see some larger fish swimming around in there. And I'll get into a little more information possibly about those ones as well. But to start off with, I'm gonna just start sharing my screen right now. And as I'm going through, if anyone has questions, feel free to type them in the chat. There might be a few too many people for everyone to unmute themselves and start asking questions, but as those questions come in, they can get filtered to me, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go through. All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. Hopefully that works for us today. All right, how's that? Oh, it's loading. How's that looking for folks? Well, not sure if people can hear me right now. Let me see if I can get the chat.
Yes, Adam.
Oh, looks
we
good.
Can
Oh,
see
excellent.
It and we can hear you.
All right, excellent, excellent.
We typed that into the chat box. Right.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so my title for Save the Bay, I'm the aquarium manager, education specialist, lead aquarist, or an aquarist for those who don't know is kind of like a biologist, but in an aquarium, kind of like an aquarium biologist, sort of squish those words together. And then I'm also a climate change education specialist for Save the Bay as well. And we have multiple locations. I'm based out of our Newport one, First Beach, Easton's Beach. That's my contact info there if anyone has follow-up questions as well. All right, so who is Save the Bay? We talked a little bit about it already during our intro there, but Save the Bay, we're an environmental, non-governmental, non-profit organization. We began in 1970. We were founded by just a small group of concerned citizens about the health of Narragansett Bay. There was really no laws about what could go into the water, what could come out of the water. So pollution, overfishing, things like that were a lot of the biggest issues that we began to tackle. And since then, we've really grown a lot. We've picked up a lot of steam and we've gotten a lot of help over the years. This photo right here is actually our headquarters up in Providence. It's actually built on a landfill, and actually that landfill was put in on an island, and once it was filled with trash, it no longer was an island. It was designated as a brownfield site, so basically like an industrial waste site, and Save the Bay was like, perfect, this is where we're going to build our headquarters and show people that you can bring back the land in beautiful ways and turn it into something that's good for the environment. This is right in the Port of Providence off of exit 18 behind the Johnson & Wales campus there, a historically extremely overpolluted area in Narragansett Bay. And we're actually getting closer and closer to having swimmable and fishable water in that area, which could potentially happen, which is a super exciting thing for Save the Bay. All right, so our mission is to protect and improve Narragansett Bay. Our vision is to have a fully swimmable, fishable, healthy Narragansett Bay that's accessible to the public, accessible for all. So we want it to be healthy for the life that lives in the bay, beyond the people, but then also the people as well, because we're all so connected and one. Quick chart of Narragansett Bay, but I'm sure most of you know a bit about that. I know a lot of you work with, do different things with the Maritime Institute, so I'm sure you've looked at various maps and things like that. Block Island, unfortunately, is not on here. It's a little bit further south. And this is a fun map that I like to take a look at really quick. This is a watershed map of Narragansett Bay. This is a map that we kind of produced, so that we use a lot in our education programs and different initiatives as well. But you can kind of see the outline of Rhode Island there. And one interesting thing to note is that about 60% of the Narragansett Bay watershed is actually in Massachusetts. There's even parts of Little Narragansett Bay watershed that's even in Connecticut as well. And Little Narragansett Bay is kind of like the southern coastal ponds down in South County, sort of the southwestern corner of the state. So it becomes, really difficult for our policy department, making sure there's good laws to help protect Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island when you're maybe communicating with someone in Massachusetts that's all the way up in Worcester or somewhere in Brockton, something like that. It's hard to get a lot of people, excited about keeping their water quality happy and healthy, because it all drains into Narragansett Bay, affects the life in our bay. So that's one thing that, we definitely work hard on. All right, and there's a few different ways that we are trying to save the bay. And we really try and take an all-encompassing view for the most part. So one thing we do a lot of is habitat restoration and adaptation. So we go into various habitats that have been destroyed by people, by human activities in different ways, and we try and kind of restore them. And more recently, we've really seen it more as an adaptation. And what the difference between that, restoring would be trying to bring something back to the way it used to be. And adaptation, it's more adapting it for the future of Narragansett Bay and what Rhode Island has in store for it. So taking into account all the changes that people have made in the surrounding areas, how the climate is changing for the life in that area, and really trying to build it in ways that are going to be resilient into the future. Right now, you can see this group of high school students that we brought out into a salt marsh that's actually digging what we call a runnel. And this is a way to help with drainage in a salt marsh, because one thing that's really difficult for salt marshes is sea level rise. So as our oceans warm and the levels of the ocean are rising due to climate change, our salt marshes are flooding at an extremely fast rate. So one thing that we do is we go in and dig these runnels that help kind of drain the upper areas and make it, and we've seen, direct evidence that it makes the marsh a lot stronger and keeps those grasses from dying. And those grasses are such an important part of a marsh. And then what we were founded on, policy work, advocacy. So, the way I like to think about it, the Bay doesn't have a voice. Save the Bay tries to be a voice for the Bay. So if there's an issue that comes up, we try and let people know, hey, this boat is coming up. You can make a decision on what you think is best for this thing that's going to be happening soon. And it's really the power of Rhode Islanders and the people that care about the environment that help make that change. And a lot of the reason why Save the Bay has been able to have a lot of success over the years in our advocacy department. That's our current executive director, I believe, at the State House. That's Jonathan Stone. And then another part of our organization is our education department. That department started probably in the mid 80s. That's the department that I'm directly under. So that's really where my expertise lies, is in education. So our whole idea with this is, it's great to have great laws to help protect the Bay. It's really important for people to restore habitats and adapt habitats in the Bay so they can be around. But if people don't understand why this is happening over and over again, it's going to keep happening over and over again. So education is so key, so important. We want to develop those memories and that learning, especially with youngsters, because they're going to grow up and remember that stuff. But we do work with all ages. We say we work, from K to gray. So everything from, preschool through college, high school, everything, continuing ed and beyond. And then we also have just a phenomenal amount of volunteers that help do all the different things that we do. Everything from shoreline cleanups, trash cleanups, planting various, salt marshes, sand dunes, helping do things like storm drain marking, and even a lot of them will volunteer to educate in our different facilities as well. And we have about 4,000 volunteers a year, which, we're super proud of. Awesome. So one thing I wanted to do was just talk a little bit about Save the Bay goals that affect Block Island in different ways, because just because you all are out on that island there doesn't mean we don't care about you. We actually do a lot of work out on Block Island over the years. Definitely, we always wish we could do more. So when people come up with things that Save the Bay might want to get involved with, we always want to talk with everyone and see if there's something we can do if it's within our capacity. But one big goal of Save the Bay is climate change adaptation. We've talked about that a little bit, but the basic idea, when we burn fossil fuels, it releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, creating kind of a heat trapping blanket around our planet, and causing things to change on our planet. Our oceans are getting warmer, the sea levels are rising, the ocean's becoming more acidic. All those sort of things are having a pretty large impact on Narragansett Bay. And there's a lot of things we can do to help mitigate that, and Save the Bay works really hard on that in all of our departments. We've talked about a little bit about our education programs and why that's so important. We've definitely done PDs out on Block Island with Bimmy before and checked out their facility. And we definitely try and get students out there every once in a while as well. We love it. And then we have done restoration and adaptation projects out on Block Island. It's been a long time since we have. But we've definitely talked with other organizations that do stuff out there as well, and make sure that we're helping with that too. But various examples of projects that we do within our restoration and adaptation department are going to be things like salt marsh elevation. So just increasing the elevation of salt marshes, bringing in fill to make them higher and more resilient to sea level rise. That's the kind of thing that can definitely happen on Block Island. Even land acquisition, so helping to protect land in different ways, making sure it's being controlled by organizations that can protect it into the future. We do a ton of dam removal to help restore fish runs in various rivers, resizing culverts that might be restricting flow to different parts. It's so important to get heavy flow into salt marshes from the ocean and freshwater as well. And those are just some, great examples. Removing infrastructure near the coast where erosion is a huge issue, to help people not spend as much money and keep doing that, and replace it with vegetated zones that are more resilient to things like that. Ooh, I think I went too far there. Let me see if I can go back. Giving it all away. Let's go back here. Thanks for bearing with me, everyone. And feel free to stop me at any moment if anyone has questions about what I'm saying here. Now, one thing that I wanted to talk about was a little bit about fisheries policy internally within Save the Bay. A lot of people think that Save the Bay makes laws and that Save the Bay is a governmental organization. We are not a governmental organization. We are not state. We are not federal. We are not a town or city organization. We're an independent nonprofit. And what we do is, if we find that there is an issue within Narragansett Bay or the surrounding watershed or any of Rhode Island's land or water that affects the bay, and it's something that we think we can make a difference with, we will initiate our various departments. So we'll teach there, we'll adapt habitat, we'll inform people about what's happening there. So hopefully policy can be changed to make a good policy for the bay. So there's a few criteria that can trigger Save the Bay getting involved in fisheries management. So some of those different triggers that might get our policy department involved with fisheries is that it's affecting the ecological health of Narragansett Bay. So some action people are doing that could be affecting the health of the bay. It could threaten the public trust. So in some way threaten people's ability to use and enjoy the bay. it's so important. If we want to protect the bay, we need to keep it accessible to every single person, and everyone have equal rights to be able to use it in all the different ways: fishing, swimming, all that kind of stuff. Another thing is it threatens the sustainability of any species in the bay. So if there's something happening where a vulnerable species might, become threatened or extinct from human actions, we want to make sure we're stepping in the best we can to let people know that that's happening. We don't want this to kind of go by the wayside. And then another thing that we always take into note is that any of these issues are supported by compelling scientific evidence and scientific consensus. We don't want to jump on any of these if it's kind of hearsay. A few people are saying they say this or that. We want to make sure that there is research being done. We talk to the scientists. We make sure that we're making good decisions. And we also want to make sure if we're getting involved, it's something that Save the Bay can have a positive outcome with. It gets really tough when you're managing an organization to know when it's good to become involved and when it's not. Sometimes a project might be, hopeless in different ways, or just more than we can possibly manage. So it's something that we kind of have to balance out within our capacity as well, which is always tough. All right, so here's just a few examples of various projects that has been within our advocacy department in working with fisheries. So we've done a lot of work historically with menhaden, horseshoe crabs, shellfish, herring, and structures of various councils like the CRMC, DEM, Fish and Wildlife Services, things like that. And then there's different levels of involvement that might happen depending on these different triggers that are happening on the left-hand side there. So things like food web alteration, habitat loss, issues with water quality, something that's being done that facilitates invasive species. That's something we work with a lot. Something that might have an impact on habitat restoration and adaptation, changes in the availability of natural resources like different types of shellfish or access to the bay, things like that. Something that might just make the bay turn into an ugly place, something that people won't want to come to, like a lot of construction and things like that. Any type of cultural loss that could happen for people that have fished here for generations, whether they're indigenous or fishermen that have done it with their families since they immigrated here, that sort of thing. Anything that will limit use or access to the bay. And then anything that's going to directly make a species decline. That could be different triggers that'll get us to be involved. And that's some of the examples that really we've worked on in the past. All right, excellent. So what my primary role is at Save the Bay is working at our Exploration Center and Aquarium. Oops, I did it again. I'm gonna stop the share for 1 second. Oops. Sorry about that, guys. 1 second. All right, cool. So, oh, and I'll put it back in present mode. There we go. All right, awesome. So my primary role is managing our Exploration Center and Aquarium. I'm not sure if any of you all have been here. Maybe if you have, you can drop a comment in the chat function there. And I can't see the chat function right now. I might have to check that out at the end. But the Exploration Center and Aquarium has been around with Save the Bay since 2006. And here we really try and bring our education program to light and make it shine. And I'm going to try and tell you how we try and do that responsibly as well while housing animals. All right, so our collection of life in our aquarium is 100% from Rhode Island waters, primarily Narragansett Bay, but a lot of stuff from the Rhode Island Sound as well. And we kind of choose 3 different methods, or a few different methods of managing those animals and making sure that we're trying to manage this wildlife in a responsible way. So much of this life that we have here is transitional. So we get a lot of this life when it's juvenile, young, or even eggs, grow them for about a year, learn about them while they're here, and then release them back out into the wild. Hopefully they're larger and stronger at that point, and they're able to have a higher survival rate going back into the wild. Some animals don't do well with that, and we just don't capture those animals and work with them in our facility. We leave them out in the bay if it's something really sensitive that's just not going to do well in that situation. Another thing that we do with our animals here is we actually breed a ton of our animals. So our sharks and our skates, we actually breed them. And we have a brood stock that gets swapped out every year back out into the wild, and we release the young into the wild. We actually have released, probably about 1,000 individuals over the years of shark and skate species, and we'll learn a little bit about those in a little bit as well. And then the other reason we take animals in is we actually have a ton of rescues here. So a lot of animals that just wouldn't survive without us. All of our turtles are victims of poaching that we have here. We have a lot of animals called Gulf Stream orphans. So things that get washed up into Narragansett Bay through the Gulf Stream current. And they just wouldn't survive Rhode Island's cold winter. So we like to house them. And the whole goal is to get people in here, teach them about the amazing life in Narragansett Bay, hopefully inspire them, and try and get them more involved with everything we do at Save the Bay. And that's really my function with Save the Bay, and getting involved with all the other stuff we've sort of been talking about. Excellent. So the next thing, I'm going to stop sharing this screen. I'm actually going to share a different one. So I want to talk a little bit about a current initiative that Save the Bay is working on. Give me 1 second to share a different screen. All right, hopefully everyone could see that as well. So this is a current initiative that our policy department is spearheading, but all of our other departments definitely help with it as well. So it's called the Ocean State Climate Adaptation and Resilience Fund, also known as OSCAR. So this fund is something that's going to help the state become more ready to deal with the effects of climate change. And a lot of it is going to have to do with sea level rise. So climate change is affecting Rhode Island in many different ways. Sea levels are rising. There's a lot of which causes a lot of coastal erosion, which is also fueled by storm surge and increasing rain intensity and flooding. You can see a picture on the right side there of some coastal flooding during a king tide, which is basically like an extremely high tide at Arnold's Neck Drive in Warwick. And this is unfortunately, a really common sight in a lot of coastal areas. So this idea with this fund is to create funding to fix a lot of infrastructure like this, move roads out of the way, replant with vegetated buffers and things like that. So yeah, just as we're saying, our infrastructure is vulnerable to all of these things, whether it's roads, parking lots, houses, various things like that. And that's going to affect a lot of different things. Municipal infrastructure, environment, public health, welfare in general, and economic well-being. Having roads that are flooded and people can't travel on really can be an issue. And I know on Block Island, there definitely could be a lot of issues with that. And this is the kind of fund that could potentially help with things like that, even on Block Island as well. So great things that we can do to prepare for this is reduce the vulnerability of low-lying infrastructure through measures that include removal and relocation of infrastructure. So moving things back away from the coast to a level that's going to be agreed upon by scientists that we're working with, that is a safe level for the foreseeable future. That's a really great way to do it. So one thing people, we really took a lot of time thinking about this. How are we going to find money for this? Where's this money going to come from? And most voters and taxpayers do not want to pay higher taxes for environmental work or really for anything. So we came up with this idea that we would have the state have a tax on import of barrels of oil into Rhode Island. And the idea would be, it would be a nickel per barrel fee. So every barrel that comes in, the state would charge them a nickel, and that would fund the Oscar program. Save the Bay estimates that that will produce just under $2 million annually. And $2 million annually is not going to fix all of our problems, but let me tell you, it's going to be a great start for Rhode Island. That money would go towards all of these types of projects we've been talking about. So infrastructure relocation or removal, regrading of eroded banks using natural materials and vegetation for stabilization, floodplain restoration, end of road pavement removal. There's a lot of pavement that just kind of goes into the bay now. It's kind of interesting how many places have that. And you know, if you remove that and replace it with a vegetated zone, it's really going to protect the things that are behind it. Those buffer zones really help prevent erosion. It's amazing. And then there's a lot of culverts in Rhode Island. So, you know, basically an area where water can flow under a road that are undersized and need to be made larger. Excellent. Oh, I think I'm seeing some hands here. Valerie, is your hand raised?
She said her hand is raised, but she can't unmute.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I
So
can unmute.
I'm going to ask.
Why not more per barrel?
Oh, well, yeah. So the question is, why is it only 5 cents a barrel? Why not more?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I don't know the answer to that. That is a really good question for our policy department. That's a good point. I'm curious where that number came from for sure. But it would be great if it could be more. But it's tough, you know, there's voters in Rhode Island that are going to be for and against this. There's a lot of different stakeholders in a vote for something like this. So finding that balance of, you know, how much money can we charge without it being too much for them, for everyone to agree, that might be part of it, you know. That's a really great question.
As sort of a follow-up, Adam, who would be a good candidate for getting Oscar funds? I mean, are these towns, organizations, individuals?
Yeah.
What would be the makeup of the ideal candidate for a grant?
Yeah, so to get funding like this, I'm assuming there's going to be an application process. You know, this is going to be managed by the state. So if this does happen, the state will decide who gets this money. You know, Save the Bay will not be deciding that. So they're going to have to come up with their own process to figure that out. And you know, historically, organizations that get funding for stuff like this, you know, definitely Save the Bay. We do a ton of this type of work, but other environmental organizations that have a history of doing this type of stuff or are ready to get their hands dirty and start doing this kind of stuff. Towns and cities have done this before, absolutely. I work with the city of Newport on dune habitat restoration at Easton's Beach. And we've partnered with them. We've written grants kind of in partnership with them in different ways. And that's happened in a lot of cities and towns throughout Rhode Island with Save the Bay as well. But a lot of other organizations can do this type of thing too. Great questions. All right, excellent. So where was I? So, you know, just to start off with, Save the Bay really wanted to make sure that people knew, you know, as we're informing people about this and the information about the Oscar project, there's tons of projects that are ready to hit the road and start working. And these are just a few examples that are on this fact sheet here. But, you know, there's stuff in Cranston, Warwick, Portsmouth, Narragansett, Newport Harbor, and I know that there's stuff on Block Island as well. And it's going to take people living in these towns as well to kind of speak up about it as well to their town representatives. Let Save the Bay know when we know about these various projects. That's when we can get involved with them. So basically, the more people tell us, the more we try and do that kind of stuff as well. All right, awesome. I'm going to stop sharing this unless anyone has any further questions about the Oscar project. All right, and then what I could do too with this fact sheet, I can actually share that with BIMI at some point too, and they'll have access to that as well. All right, excellent. So now what I'm going to do is we've done all the a whole bunch of talking. I'm going to try and show you all just some of the cool stuff that we have going on here at the aquarium for a couple minutes. And then at any point while I'm showing this stuff, any questions, we can do some Q&A for sure. I'm going to try and switch that over now. All right, we'll take 1 second. All right, can folks see that? Ooh.
You tell.
Adam?
Yeah.
We can see it, but as part of 4 screens, can you pin it so it takes up the whole screen?
Yeah, let me see if I can figure that out. How's that?
No.
It says it's pinned on my screen.
I think you'll have to make it full screen. I think
Oh,
you
okay.
pinned it, and I think you can now do.
Let me see what I could do here. Did that help at all?
It did not. Sorry.
It did not, of course.
We can see it though.
Yeah, it's teeny tiny. Maybe people on their individual computers, they can pin it. If not, here, let me try a couple other buttons here, see if I can make it a little happier. Someday we won't have to teach in a virtual world,
Suggest that to everybody, George, if they go to their own computer and pin it by the 3 little buttons in the corner.
Okay, so the suggestion we have for everyone who sees it on their computer is to pin the picture using the 3 little buttons in the corner so that it takes up your whole screen.
All right, cool. Looks like Judith Gray says that she can see it. Good. All right, well, at least Judith can see it, so we'll work with that. All right, so first of all, if anyone wants to type in the chat, go for it. Does anybody have any clues what we're looking at here? Any idea? I'm gonna take a sip of water while y'all think about that.
Well, I know, so it's no fair for me to guess.
Yeah. All right, well, I'll give it away. So this is actually an egg case from a shark. So sharks have various types of reproduction. Some of them are oviparous, where they lay eggs. Some are viviparous, where they actually give live birth, very similar to how humans do. And then some are even oviviparous, where they have an egg case like this. They hold it internally until it hatches out. So sharks and skates and rays have various ways of reproducing. So this is actually an egg case from a chain cat shark. And it's right now it's on a microscope and it's submerged underwater. And this case is completely sealed in its own little environment internally there. It is subject to temperature changes of the water, but there's no water flow going into the egg at this point. So you can see the big round blob at the bottom of the screen. That's actually the yolk sac. And then around it is kind of a yellowy egg case. And even as the egg case gets older, it turns more of kind of a brownish color. The yolk starts to disappear and the embryo gets larger. Now, taking a look at the embryo, it actually has almost like a disturbingly similar amount of similarities to human development, as crazy as that sounds. So if we take a look, there's the yolk sac and there's an umbilical cord attached to the animal. You can actually see its spinal cord developing on the left-hand side of the screen through its tail. That's kind of the sort of translucent flesh around that thin sort of reddish line on the left side. And then just to the right of the umbilical cord, you can actually see these things waving around that kind of look like hairs, like little tiny follicles kind of waving from side to side. And that's actually the shark's gills. And this movement that it has, it's actually helping it respirate and breathe, learn how to breathe. It's not breathing yet, but it's going to be learning how to breathe. And that movement sort of gets those gills moving and flapping. And then as it ages, those gills are no longer external and they become internal within the shark, which is just such a crazy thing to watch and observe. And if you keep moving right along the body of this animal, you can actually see its eyes developing. They're so small and underdeveloped now that it can't see quite yet. But really soon it's going to be able to start even seeing things when it's in the egg sac. It takes anywhere from about 6 to 12 months for the shark to actually hatch out of the egg. It can wait longer within the egg, depending on conditions. So if it's too turbid, temperature's not right, getting jostled around, that sort of thing, it might actually wait longer within the egg before it hatches out and waits till it's appropriate, which is kind of cool. So if you all give me a moment, I'm going to attempt to put another egg on the screen. William, your hand is raised. Go for it.
Okay, Adam,
Yeah.
my name is William Penn. In the 1990s, I was on the board of Save the Bay
Oh, wow.
and oversaw the transition between Trudy, and Kurt. Who are the
Yeah.
current board members, and is there any representation from Block Island?
On our current board?
Yes.
That's a good question. Our board is quite large right now, and last I checked, we didn't have any representatives from Block Island. I know we had been working with the highway department on Block Island. That's some involvement we've had with some folks there. They were helping us do a few different things. But as far as on our board, nothing last that I checked. But I know we're always interested in new board members, and we always want to talk to folks that might be interested in doing something like that.
Well, I'm a former board member, and I would be interested in coming back on the board.
Yeah. How interesting would that be, just to take your knowledge and experience from what it was like to be a board member in the 90s and translate that to now? I think that would be awesome. So if you want, you can definitely shoot me an email at the end of this, and we can try and connect up, and I can get you connected with our director.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great to hear. All right, so I'm going to try and swap out to another egg here if people are interested in seeing that. All right, now this one's not as active as the last one. Maybe he's asleep now, but when we put this one on the screen earlier, he was swimming all over the place. You could see his gills really flapping, but I guess now he's calmed down a bit. But this one is much older. This one I would guess is probably closer to maybe 4 or 5 months, something like that. You can see it's still got a little bit of yolk sac, but it's much smaller. You can see the head is well more developed, and you can actually see that the gills are now internal within the animal. It's been absorbed by the flesh around there, so it can start learning to breathe. And then at this point, it's also done something called venting. So it basically gets like a little spike on the end of its tail, and it cuts an opening in the egg case, and then ambient water from the surrounding environment can circulate in and out, and that helps them sort of acclimate to the water that they're going to be living in within the next few months. Cool. All right, I'm going to see if I can show a different one here. Not that one, a different one. Yeah, this one's not quite as interesting. I'll see if I can find one that's a little more interesting, but this is actually a freshly laid skate egg purse here. So this one was probably laid within the last week or so. Besides the sharks, we actually also breed skates here as well. And you could really clearly see the yolk. The sac here is a bit larger than the chain cat shark one we were looking at. This is from actually a little skate. Here's a good one. All right, and hopefully folks can see that one a little better there. All right, excellent. And I see a question there, if I can explain the importance of this a little bit, for sure. All right, so you can definitely see the skate. This one's very well developed. This one has vented already as well. You can see it's actually curled up within that egg there, and it's gonna pop out at any moment. You can even see a couple little hanger-ons there. There's a couple marine worm larvae that are kind of swimming around either inside or on the outside of the egg case, which I think is super cool. So there's a couple reasons why we breed and release these species. We'll start with the chain cat. Well, actually, both of them kind of. They're both very easy to raise in captivity. So that's really important when taking into account projects that we can work on. It's got to be something that's feasible. There's other species that might have a higher environmental need to have more of them in the wild, but they are extremely difficult within our facility to do. We would need, a multi-million-dollar facility to do some of those. These ones are pretty easy to do. And then also little skate, there are millions of pounds harvested annually from Narragansett Bay and from the Sound, and millions of pounds, literally. It's used for all different kinds of things, from bait to animal feed, chicken feed, pet feed, that sort of thing. And a lot of it's bycatch as well. So many of them get accidentally caught, die within the process, and then thrown back into the water, and then, never used for anything as well. Another reason why is about 25% of all shark, skate, and ray species worldwide, about 25% are on the endangered species list. So how much longer until these other species are on there as well? They're getting closer and closer. So that's something really to think about, especially with the amount that we're harvesting. So putting these back out into the bay, there's no risk of overpopulating, that's for sure. And these are kind of, just a couple extra drops in the bucket for the skates. Also, the numbers that we release aren't so great that's going to make a, necessarily a significant impact on the populations. It's just a great thing to do because we can. And then the sharks, the cat sharks, they are primarily a victim of bycatch. So a lot of kind of the deep sound draggers, things that'll drag in the Rhode Island Sound, will catch these all by accident. And a lot of times pulling them up so quickly is going to cause them to have, oh, you can see his tail moving around. That's so cool. Just pulled that out for us. Must know he's on camera. Or she, hard to tell at this point. You actually can't tell if it's a male or a female till they're a few years old, which is kind of cool. But yeah, the cat sharks, are pulled up from so deep that it causes a lot of health issues, and they usually die in that process. A lot of them too are, kind of traded in the pet industry, and that has led to a lot of wildlife removals as well. Good question. All right, excellent. So it looks like we're getting close on time here. Do we want to do any other Q&A, any other questions about what I've talked about? I know I've gone over quite a few things.
Adam, this is George Davis.
Yep.
A question I have, it's a leading question, I suppose, but do you work with some other organizations with your breeding programs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great leading question for sure. So actually, I know that you all at BIMI are developing your education facility over there, your outdoor aquarium, which is just so cool. I wish we had an outdoor aquarium. It's so neat. But I know you're also going to start doing some indoor exhibits as well in your facility. And we're actually going to start bringing over shark and skate embryos for you all to raise and then help us release back out into the wild as well, which I'm just so excited to get some help with that. There's a few schools in Rhode Island and other aquariums that have helped us with that in the past and will probably again in the future as well. But I'm just so psyched to get you all involved with this and spread this awesome project around a little bit.
We are too.
Yeah, and everyone listening, you'll have to go in to BIMI and check it out this summer when these are all there. You'll be able to see it in person, or if you come to the mainland, you'll be able to schedule trips to come visit our indoor facility too.
Oh, here's. Oh,
You're welcome, Valerie. I see that there. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I know it always feels like I'm like talking about myself so much. Always feels like you know, kind of funny. But it's really great that you all wanted to invite me on, and it's totally an honor. And for everyone who's still listening here, you know, anything you can do to help support local environmental organizations is huge. Spread the word about what's going on. Keep your eyes open. Let Save the Bay know about stuff that's going on. These are all great things that everyone can do to help save the Bay, to help BIMI as well, because that's another wonderful environmental awareness organization. We can all do a lot of good work together. I think you're muted there, George.
I am muted. Can we see Adam again? Is he showing?
Yeah, let me give it a shot here. We'll see if it agrees with me. There we go.
Oh, excellent. Well, I can't say I'm as cute as a baby skate, but
You're up there.
probably about the same amount of hair. Anyway, Adam, this has been a pleasure, and seeing the world of those creatures from your camera in the tank. That was really awesome.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
and thanks for dealing with some of the technical issues we struggled with here.
Yeah,
And we do have a
absolutely.
question, and Valerie is going to go ahead.
Adam, I just have a quick question. If somebody here wants to go over to the Save the Bay Aquarium, when do you open back up?
So we're going to be reopening to the public early July at this point. We're a pretty small aquarium and we're completely indoors, so it's not going to be just walk up and come in. You'll have to schedule appointments. You can either do that at our front desk, which will be outside of the aquarium, or you can call us, or you can go right to our website, savebay.org, and schedule a tour. We'll be taking groups of up to 8 people at a time, and we'll definitely at this point be doing that through all of July and August.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Adam. It's been a pleasure. And it
You're
was
welcome.
great getting to meet you out on the island a couple of weeks ago. And thank you for your help with our tanks. And thank you for the one tank that Save the Bay has provided to BIMI. That's pretty special.
Yeah, excellent. Well, you gotta spread it around,
Okay. I don't see any other questions.
No, I think we're good. Judy said thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And that's a wrap for our second online talk of 2021.
Good night.
Thank
All
you.
right, everyone, have a
for
great night.
attending. Good night.